everybody to TUBBS. How we doing? Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have to. Well, tonight we're in Deuteronomy 7, maybe 8, seeing how fast these go. It's it's not Deuteronomy, it's do no wrong to me. Yeah. So these are a couple short chapters per se. About 25 verses each. Yep. It's a satchel. But before we get into that, let's have a quick prayer here. Lord, thank you for this place that you've given us to come together and have some corporate fellowship and really get to know you better by going through the old stories that really aren't covered that much in modern day. And we can look back and see not only how Jesus fulfilled the law, but pick out lessons and learn that people really haven't changed since then till now. So I pray that you open our hearts, minds, and ears to hear your message and get closer to you. Amen. All right. So I like how my Bible, it just starts out, warnings. Deuteronomy 7, warnings. All right. Oh, you're fine. No problem. Nope. Let's hope that works. There we go. Verse 1. When the Lord your God brings you into the land where you are entering to possess it and clears away many nations before you, the Hittites, the Gershites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and stronger than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them before you and you defeat them, you shall utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them and show no favor to them. Furthermore, you shall not intermarry with them. You shall not give your daughters to their sons, nor shall you take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will quickly destroy you. But thus you shall do to them. You shall tear down their altars and smash their sacred pillars, and hew down their Asherim, and burn their graven images with fire. So, here, towards the end here, let's see. So Asherim, graven images, hew down their sacred pillars, basically completely and utterly destroy them. Does this sound kind of harsh? So through today's society, yes, but biblically, no. Why? So here's something I didn't know about until I looked into it. Because the Canaanites served sex gods, male and female sex gods, and practiced human sacrifices with their own children. So this is why God's like, no, destroy them. They are an abomination. But here in the beginning, it's like we realize that they are not relying on their own strength but God's, and they will only win through God's hand because they're the smallest nation out of all of them. You know. And God knows exactly how many people, what the nations have. He has all the stats. When I was younger, I used to think it'd be really cool to get to heaven and ask God the stats of your life. Like how many footsteps you've taken, how many sodas you've had. Your total hours of playing video games over your entire lifetime. Yeah. I bet you God has some really interesting stats. Yep. How many hours you laid in bed after the alarm clock had rung, but you haven't gotten up yet? God has some interesting stats. What we can also notice here with the language of when, when the Lord your God brings you into the land, when you possess this land. So the language of when is signifying that God can be counted on and he's faithful. Like Moses is talking about this because they haven't crossed yet. They haven't even entered the promised land yet. And Moses is already talking about it like it's a done deal. So, and a little bit later in the chapter, next chapter, they're going to go over some of the other things God has already done. So he's reiterating again, past faithfulness, equals current faithfulness equals future faithfulness. Let's see. Oh yeah. We are also to show no mercy to our enemies, sin. We can't play nice with something that hates us and destroys us. And we cannot play nice with sin, and sin keeps us from enjoying God's blessing. Just as it would have for the Israelites. All right, verse 6. All right. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the people who are on the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love on you because you were more in number than any of the peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples, but because the Lord loved you and kept an oath which he swore to your forefathers. The Lord brought you out by a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So again, like I said, he just keeps reiterating where they came from, what God has done to show past faithfulness to future faithfulness. Well, and God chose his people. They were set apart by his choosing, not because of their own worthiness. Well, and this brings up an interesting discussion here. Does anybody know what predetermination means? Yeah. Predetermination, predestination. You know what that means? Yeah, so predestination is essentially the theory that since the beginning of time, God already knows who's going to enter heaven and who's going to rebel. I believe it's one of the core foundational beliefs of Calvinism. So, right. So, if we were to grant this theory credence and say, some people are predestined for heaven, some people are predestined for hell, maybe it's because God sees the whole picture. But the way I see it is everyone is predestined for heaven, and it's our choices along the way that make the final outcome what it is, whether we reject Jesus. What do you guys think? All right, so we got it in reverse. Predestined for hell, and we make the choice to go to heaven through belief in Jesus. All right. So people might be going to hell because they refuse God's invitation. Well, it's interesting because God is under no obligation to save us either. So it's really by his choosing. So it's kind of an interesting topic. Not that I want to derail all of Deuteronomy 7 for a talk about predetermination or predestination. Right. it's so interesting because as humans, we only see time in really one direction, but God is outside of time. So it's like being able to see all parts of the movie simultaneously. Yeah, and the other point I had on this is knowing that they are God's chosen should be motivation for obedience and to destroy obstacles in the way of obedience, whatever they might be. All right, verse 9. Know therefore that the Lord your God, He is God, the faithful God, who keeps His covenant and His loving kindness to 1,000th generation with those who love Him and keep His commandments, but repays those who hate Him to their faces to destroy them. He will not delay with them or with him who hates Him. He will repay him to his face. And as I went a few weeks ago, to his face in Hebrew really just means personally. Not like literally to his face, but just more of a personal. Like God's going to deal with this. 11. Therefore you shall keep the commandments and statutes and the judgments which I am commanding you today to do them. So my note here is over generations the Canaanites had demonstrated that they hated God, and now was their payment. Israel was just the instrument of God's wrath for their open and blatant hatred of God by serving the other sex gods and having child sacrifices. God says he'll get even. He doesn't say how. Yeah. No, it's God only knows. God makes his plans. That information's unavailable to the mortal man. All right, verse 12. Then it shall come about, because you listen to these judgments and keep and do them, that the Lord your God will keep with you his covenant and his loving kindness, which he swore to your forefathers. He will love you and bless you and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your ground, your grain, your new wine and oil, an increase of your herd, and the young of your flock in your land, which he swore to your forefathers to give you. You shall be blessed above all peoples. There will be no male or female barren among you or among your cattle. The Lord will remove from you all sickness, and he will not put on you any of the harmful diseases of Egypt which you have known, but he will lay them on all who hate you. You shall consume all the peoples whom the Lord your God will deliver to you. Your eye shall not pity them, nor shall you serve their gods, for that would be a snare to you. So, just kind of going over more of the blessings of obedience and a warning to not get involved ensnared with opposing gods or opposing ideas from the people they're taking over. But God's really just giving these people everything he wants them to have. All right. So Israel is in possession of the promised land for 550 years. 240? Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's Oh yeah, they were very violent.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that video that Fred showed. You know, they took one nation under God off the bills, or it's contested right now. But, you know, prayer out of schools, you know, they're slowly erasing our culture. And I saw this interesting quote the other day. It was a nation that aborts its children will soon be fall under the control of foreigners. So, just kind of an interesting parallel between what's happening in Deuteronomy and what's happening today. Well, well, I mean, part of it is we forget where we came from, but the other part of it is fundamentally man has not changed. Until we get to a point where we have to accept that there needs to be an outside renewing because we simply cannot do it ourselves. All right, verse 17. If you should say in your heart, these nations are greater than I, how can I dispossess them? Which means clear them out of their own land. You shall not be afraid of them. You shall well remember that the Lord, or remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and all of Egypt, the great trials which your eyes saw, and the signs and wonders, and the mighty hand and the outstretched arm by which the Lord your God brought you out. So shall the Lord your God do to all peoples of whom you are afraid. Moreover, God will send the hornet against them, until those who are left and hide themselves from you perish. You shall not dread them, for the Lord your God is in your midst, a great and awesome God. The Lord your God will clear away these nations before you little by little. You will not be able to put an end to them quickly, for the wild beasts would grow too numerous for you. But the Lord your God will deliver them before you, and will throw them into great confusion until they are destroyed. He will deliver their kings into your hand, so that you will make their name perish from under heaven. No man will be able to stand before you until you have destroyed them. So it's it's kind of like name it and claim it Moses right now. It's like God's gonna do this, God's gonna do this, God's gonna do this. Name it and claim it. And I like how he talks about it as like it's such a sure thing. Like to have that faith in the Lord that it's such a sure thing. Again, that language of when. When the Lord your God does this. When. And I have in my notes here, trust in the strength of the Lord by remembering what the Lord has already done. Again, past faithfulness equals current faithfulness equals future faithfulness. Because God is faithful to complete the work which he starts. And some of my other notes here is God's timing, not all and everything driven out all at once. I mean, this would be easy for God to do. God could be like, oh, all right, land's cleared. It's even leveled. We got rid of all the pests. God has the power to do that. But God wanted them to grow little by little through the process of taking the promised land and grow spiritually. That's kind of my takeaway from that, little by little. Also, we see here with the beasts would grow too numerous for you. You know, there would probably be some detriments to God just clearing the land and giving everything to the Israelites all at once. There might be some unforeseen consequences, like, you know, wild boars running, wreaking havoc and taking people out that Israel probably wouldn't even consider as being a problem. Kind of like with us as parents, we see things for the kids that the kids might not even realize would become a problem. But God's cool like that. verse 26. You shall not bring an abomination. Oh, no, sorry, verse 25. The graven images of their gods you are to burn with fire. You shall not covet the gold or the silver that is on them, nor take it for yourselves, or you will be ensnared by it, for it is an abomination to the Lord your God. You shall not bring an abomination into your house, and like it come under the ban. You shall utterly detest it, and you shall utterly abhor it, for it is something banned. So I had to look this up. So what do you guys think it means when it says under a ban, or does someone else's translation have something different? A cursed thing? Oh, accursed, okay. Anyone else have anything different? Don't bring a detestable thing into your home. So mine had a link back to Leviticus 27:28. I'll pull that up here real fast. So nevertheless, anything which a man sets apart to the Lord of all he has, of man or animal or the fields of his own property, shall not be sold or redeemed. And mine has a note for that. So it says anything devoted or banned or put under a ban. So they're burning these false gods as a sign to their own God. So if they were to covet that silver or gold, they would be stealing from the Lord in that way and then come under the ban. I just thought that language there was a little confusing. Yeah. Well, it's like, funny thing, we're going to get into that in chapter 8. Yep. Well, and I put here, don't covet evil. Destroy it, for it will keep you from your God, essentially. It's like Lord of the Rings, oh, that ring is too pretty to destroy. And then it makes that one guy into Smeagol. All right. So we got some time. So let's go into Deuteronomy 8 here. So mine says God's gracious dealings is kind of the subtext here. Verse 1. All the commandments that I'm commanding you today you shall be careful to do, that you may live and multiply and go in to possess the land which the Lord swore to give your forefathers. You shall remember all the ways which the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. So it's interesting here because he's calling for complete obedience to God. And he humbled them. God brought them to a place where they could only depend on God. I mean, I've been through Nevada, and there's a whole lot of nothing out in the desert, and I'd like to think that's probably what it's like over in the desert in the Middle East. And so why do we think God tested Israel? Well, anyone? So he. Yep. 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 Oh yeah. how many of us make God just the God of emergencies? Even non-believers, like something bad happens, and the first words that come out of their mouth, "Oh God." You know, it's kind of interesting. But it says here he was that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart. God already knows what's in their heart, but Israel didn't know what was in their hearts. So God was testing them so that because they overestimated themselves. We can look back at when they tried to go into battle without God, and God's like, "Don't go, I'm not with you." They go and get slaughtered. You know, so like they were overestimating themselves. Well, yeah, they waffled. Then they're like, "Oh, we'll do it," and then they went and died. Or I mean, we can look at the golden calf story again. You know, 40 days without Moses, and the calf popped out of the fire. But it's probably a manifestation of what was already in their own heart. Their idol worship. All right, verse 3. He humbled you and let you be hungry and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know. Who's controlling the... Okay. Okay. Just a second while we get the lyric, or not lyrics, the slide controller. Yeah. That always gets me. Update later. Program out. There it is. Which one are we on? 3. Oh, that's 2, 2, 3. All right. We figured it out. But you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you understand that a man does not live by bread alone, but lives by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord. Your clothing did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. Thus you were able to know in your hearts that the Lord your God was disciplining you, just as a man disciplines his son. Therefore you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God to walk in his ways and fear him. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that threw me through a loop too. 6. Okay, cool. Oh, we're fine. It's a learning experience. We're having our come to Jesus moment. So, Israel had to be humbled to be teachable. Because if they aren't humbled and willing to learn, then nothing else God is going to do is going to make a lick of sense to them, or even stick for that matter. Well, and the next part of the lesson was to be totally dependent on God. Manna beyond the abilities of any man, just waking up and having that food there every morning. It's like, where else could it come from? Did the ants bring you crumbs over the course of the night? No, it came from God. I mean, and man shall not live by bread alone is a command and a statement of truth at the same time. Because we are to live by God alone and not any of the material things. And anyone who thinks they can live for themselves is one of the living dead. Who thinks that, I mean, we hear it in rap songs, we see it on the media, I'm doing so well, I'm stacking that matter, stacking that money, But if all you have is treasures here on earth, you're going to have nothing at the end. And we are to live by the word of God, not our feelings or just our experiences. Because if you're just living by your feelings, they change. Sometimes by the second. But God is consistent, certainly more consistent than our feelings, that's for sure. All right. 6. Verse 7. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water and fountains and springs flowing forth in valleys and hills, and a land of wheat and barley for beer, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, and a land of olive oil and honey, a land where you will eat food without scarcity, in which you will not lack anything, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you can dig copper. When you have eaten and are satisfied, you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given to you. And the focus here is on God, and he takes care of the rest. Just focus on God, he takes care of the rest. And God is okay with them having nice material things as long as it doesn't come between them and him. And because it becomes an idol. Oh yeah. Anything can become an idol. Speaking of work, it's like you have people who are workaholics and stuff like that. And people who obsessively play crossword puzzles. I don't know. Anything can become an idol. Sudoku. Oh, I can't. All right. And bless the Lord for all the good things in your life. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the bad to teach us a lesson. The good to... Because every good thing comes from the Lord. Oh, yeah. All right, verse 11. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments and his ordinances and his statutes which I am commanding you today. Otherwise, when you have eaten and are satisfied, and have built good houses and lived in them, and when your herds and flocks multiply, and your silver and gold multiply, and all that you have multiplies, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. He led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions, and the thirsty ground where there was no water. He brought water for you out of the rock of flint. In the wilderness he fed you manna which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you, and that he might test you to do good for you in the end. Otherwise you may say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand have made me this wealth. What were we just talking about? Just oh, things are going good. Ah, it must be me. No. No. Yeah, he was frustrated. Yep. Yep. Yeah, God has a funny way of having all things relate and testify to his goodness. And, testify to his nature as well. Right. And it's just make sure to not forget the Lord when things are going all good. And God is not just the God of emergencies, he's the God of our lives. We are to reflect this in the heart and not just play lip service for our own vanity. It's we really have to be really grateful for what we do have and not just be oh, thank God, and just be all flippant with it. Just be really, no, it is all God. Because God knows the heart. And like God uses us and blesses us for his eternal purpose. So even though he gives us good things now, we should always keep in mind that these are for his purpose. You know. All right. Yep. Everything we are and everything we are to become is to fulfill his purpose, says our brother here. Yep. Yep. We know it but don't live it. Yep. Well, and it's like just like the Apostle Paul, he's like, there's a war inside of me. Or, I hate the things I should love and I love the things I should hate. And there's this internal battle inside of me. Like there's two laws inside of him fighting for dominance. So it's like, so we have the greatness of God and the worry of man. All right. I think that's pretty profound, actually. All right. The blind squirrel found a nut. Yep. All right. Yep. All right. Verse 19. When it starts getting spicy. I take after Fred. I've learned everything I know from Fred. Yep. Verse 18. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who is giving you the power to make wealth, that he may confirm his covenant which he swore to your fathers, your fathers, as it is this day. Everything is from God. 19, the spicy part. It shall come about if you ever forget the Lord your God. He could have just stopped right there. And go after other gods and serve them and worship them. I testify against you today that you will surely perish, like the nations that the Lord makes perish before you. So you shall perish, because you would not listen to the voice of the Lord your God. Perish by losing your life, perish by losing God's favor. Yep. Or, a man without a vision shall perish, which really just means a man without hope, you know, some hope for the future. Yeah, it's like that old saying, there's more than one type of prison. Yep. Well, I'm kind of surprised we got through all of 7 and 8. No, we're right on time. Shaking the 8 ball over there. Reply hazy asking in later. All right, all right. Well, that's 8 and 9. And now we're going to go to our personal and private prayer requests. But as always, we don't have Play and Pray this Friday, but next Friday we should have Play and Pray. And then this Sunday at 11, we have regular church service. This Sunday at 4 o'clock, We have Celebrate Recovery, which is our version. Oh, it's Recovery Beginnings, which is our version of Celebrate Recovery for any hurt, habit, or hang up that keeps you from God. Yep. And then, of course, next Wednesday, we'll be in Deuteronomy 9, depending on how long that is, maybe 10. All right, I'll see you guys next time.